Thanks, everybody. Oh, thank you. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri, and our next guest had his big breakthrough in the now classic WB show Gilmore Girls. He's also been on The Good Wife. He had a small part in Freaks and Geeks that is very fun to look up. And now for the last 3 seasons, Matt Czuchry has played an unconventional senior resident at Chastain Memorial Hospital in Fox's The Resident. Let's take a look.
Conrad, what's going on?
I couldn't sleep. I can't stop thinking about Jesse. And all the dialysis patients that died because of these blood clots.
Well, have you found anything? Oh my God, you did?
I went over all the information we have, and there is a long safety record for every medication they were on, except for one.
Hemopleotin.
These types of drugs can increase the risk of clots. Does hemopleotin increase that risk more than others? I don't know.
Conrad, could this have caused the PE that killed Jesse?
I don't know enough yet, but we need to talk to people who might.
I can't believe this all started with my dad. He really believed there was more to Jesse's death.
I think you could have been right.
Everybody, please welcome Matt Czuchry. Let's hear it. Hey.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I am always bowled over by medical shows and how the writers are able to tie everything together to the characters in every episode. It's like a humongous feat, in my opinion, when I watch them, that they're able to be like, well, this disease somehow will relate to this main character's family storyline or a previous storyline. They're always wrapping it up somehow or tying it in. Does it get hard for you guys to follow? Because every episode is its own procedural in a way, but at the same time, there are elements to each character that follow through, and there is a through line for each of them.
Yeah, with that clip right there, that's one of the serialized elements we have with the show. Some procedurals have serialized elements, some don't. What I do love about this show is that we have those serialized elements, and those serialized elements build off of one another from the relationships and the characters. When I auditioned for this role, I actually went up in the elevator with the creator, Amy, and I told her it reminded me of The Good Wife in terms of The Good Wife was a legal show, it was a classic genre, but this is the medical genre, but we take a different spin on that in terms of we're pulling back the curtain on all the good things and bad things that happen within the healthcare system, and we raise these ethical and moral questions, I find, which are interesting through the characters and the relationships, and I feel like when The Good Wife was at its best, that's what we did as well. So that is kind of what you bring up right at the top of this interview is what drew me to the show, and also I had a personal connection with the show in terms of the healthcare system. When this pilot came to me in 2017, a friend of mine, her mother passed away from a medical error, and I also had a friend in 2015 who I was with them on their last day when they passed away. And so when I read this, not only were the characters compelling to me, the story was compelling to me, but also I had this personal connection in the healthcare system, which I saw through this show. And I was like, if I've had these experiences, imagine how many other people have had those experiences. So I felt like this was the next step for me, and that's why I love the show.
Did it feel a little like fate in a way that this script came your way as you were just sort of coming off of dealing with these particular situations?
Yeah, and for me, I'm always trying to find what's right for the next character in my personal life and my professional life, and it was something that spoke to me on a different level, a personal level that I had a connection with, and then having this character my character Conrad is one who breaks the rules for the greater good, and he's a little bit Machiavellian in that way, and in this season he's more dangerous than he's ever been, but I felt like that kind of fighting the system mentality was something I might have a personal beat on, given the personal experiences that I've had. And also what I love about the show and that genre as a whole is that it interconnects everybody. You know, we all have to deal with life and death and health. So no matter where you live, no matter who you are, what culture, what race, that interconnects us all. So I felt like it was a way for me to kind of show and be a part of that interconnection and bring people together, as opposed to so many times nowadays we're separating each other. And for me, this is an opportunity to bring people together instead of separate them.
Right. It feels so much that entertainment is becoming niche oriented and the shows are becoming about things that are smaller and smaller and smaller to appeal to smaller audiences because we don't have to appeal to the largest audience, whereas the medical drama is still fairly universal and is for the largest audience possible because everybody gets sick.
Exactly, and that attracted me to it is that universal quality of the storylines, and again the diversity of our cast and the diversity of those storylines. Because you know, wherever you're from, you want to turn on the television and see the world the way it looks for you. And I feel like our show captures that universal nature, and that was something again that attracted me to the show was the diverse quality of the stories and characters we have in our show.
Do you think that one of the reasons you got the part is when you got into the elevator and told the creator that it reminded you of The Good Wife? She was like, "You got the part, man." It's like one of the great shows of the last like 10, 15 years, and you're telling the creator that it reminds you of it.
Thank you very much for saying that. The Good Wife was an amazing experience. We did that show for 7 seasons, and the similarities I saw was that was a legal show and a genre that has been around for a long time, but took a different spin on it in terms of we have this scorned politician's wife and some of those thematic elements. And with this, we pull back the kind of curtain on the good and bad, like I mentioned. So for
also much wackier elements as well in The Good Wife. One of the things that I always loved about that show is that when Robert and Michelle King are always open to going in these very wacky directions with their supporting characters.
Yeah, and I think in terms of finding that balance on a show, you want to find the lightness and the darkness. Again, on The Resident, I feel like we try to do that as well. I think if you skew too much in either direction, then it becomes predictable. And I think with both of those shows, hopefully there are some surprises. You know, like at our hospital at Chastain, you know, not every patient makes it, but then also some patients do, and audiences don't know what to expect. Just like on The Good Wife, those wackier elements and components keep audience members on their toes, and so you tune in for what's going to be the surprise this week. And I feel like with both of those shows, that again is what attracted me and what I loved about those shows, both as an actor and as an audience member, are those surprises.
You know, you've been doing this for some time. You've worked with some of the great TV creators that there've been. When you sign on for the lead role for a show like The Resident, and it is an ensemble, but you are the lead for all intents and purposes, do you ask for or do you want a heavier hand in terms of what the end product is going to look like and what the show is going to look like? Or are you still very comfortable just sort of acting for creators at this point, just considering the experience that you've had with some of the best that there is?
For me, I just in my personal and professional life is all about trying to find that balance. So for me, with this particular show, you know, I learned quite a bit on The Good Wife and brought that to The Residents. And one of the biggest things for me is even though I may be the glue of the show, I'm a big proponent that every character should have strong storylines and moments throughout the course of every episode in the season. So as opposed to kind of holding on to, hey, I want more material or something like that, I actually kind of go in the other direction and say that I want to support all the cast members, all the characters in having great storylines. And I hope with people who enjoy the show on The Resident, they connect to those different characters because they are fully developed and they grow and they change. And as the lead, that was one piece of me that I wanted to bring to it. And I talked to the showrunner and the creator about that all the time, and I feel like they've done a beautiful job of filling out all these stories and all these characters, because I feel that makes everything better in the show more enjoyable because you connect to these different characters. And diversity was another thing that we've talked about from the very beginning. Again, to see the world as a universal place, as it is. So those are some of the things as a lead, and again with the writers are incredibly collaborative and open to my ideas, which I'm extremely grateful for. So some of those things I am able, I think, to hopefully make the show better for everyone. And then on set, I just try to give everybody a positive space to do their best work. And I feel like that kind of shows up hopefully in the chemistry between the cast and the crew that we have, that's a little bit intangible, that you can feel as an audience member, but might not necessarily know why that's happening. And I'd like to think with our cast and crew, there is a chemistry, a respect, a positivity there that we have day to day with our show. And, that goes down to the writers, the producers, everyone in the cast and the crew. It takes hundreds and hundreds of people to make this show, coming together in a positive way and having a positive environment for everybody to do their best work. I'd like to think I contribute to that as well.
Did you ever have any hesitation about becoming number one on the call sheet? Did that make you nervous at all? Or having watched Julianne Margulies do it and other actors that you've worked for do it, did you feel comfortable that you were pretty aware of what the responsibility would be?
I felt like it was the right time to take on that challenge after The Good Wife with The Resident, and I was aware of the sacrifices that I would have to make to have that workload, that time commitment, that preparation was a next step for me in terms of going from The Good Wife to The Resident. So I was ready for it, but that's one thing, but actually experiencing it is something different. It basically is my life. The show, in terms of 7 days a week, in terms of working on the weekends, and kind of like an athlete, you watch a basketball game, you're seeing a finished product in a way, but what goes into that in terms of the training, it's the same as an actor, especially on this show for me, given the workload in terms of the preparation to try and maintain a certain standard over 23 episodes with what we do on network, to maintain a consistency every single scene of a standard of a quality over the course of 9 months is emotionally difficult. It's physically difficult, and I knew what I was getting myself into and signed up for that, but actually experiencing it is quite a bit different. It's a challenge episode to episode for sure.
I imagine it requires you to take very good care of yourself when you're not working.
I feel like that's important personally and professionally, to mind, body, and spirit, to take care of yourself. And again, I go back to the athlete analogy. I did play tennis growing up, and I think that helped me, that the amount of sleep you're getting, the food you're putting in your body. People might think that's a bit strange to talk about when you're seeing an actor on television, but yeah, physically and emotionally taking care of yourself. So, I think what audience members might not see is, you don't. I get up at Monday at 4:30 in the morning, and so there's a fatigue factor that goes into that, and very rarely am I ever at work operating on 100%, in terms of whether you're sick or getting up early or you have an off day. But I think what it means to be a professional is that the audience doesn't feel that. They see that scene and that character, that moment is truly happening, and that's when I feel like
neither do your coworkers as well. That's like
exactly, and that's, I think, the magic trick in being a professional, is that regardless of what you're going through, between action and cut, you're making these characters and these scenes believable. It's incredibly difficult to do, but I enjoy that piece of the puzzle in terms of the challenge of overcoming those obstacles, so that the audience is fully invested in what they're watching, and not personally maybe what I'm going through.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of that. I show up and I'm like, I'm hungover. Somebody get me a coffee. I'm tired. I can't do this. When I was doing some research, I didn't realize this, and it was one of my favorite shows still. You did have a bit part in Freaks and Geeks, a small part, right?
Teenage boy number one, I believe.
Teenage boy number one, that's what it was?
Yeah.
What was that set like? How old were you?
Threw water balloons at James Franco. So,
that's right.
Yeah. Spray painted their car and all that. Yeah, I mean that's James Franco. Early on, I could see that that show. I loved that show, and I happened to get on there as teenage boy number one. That was a cool moment. During that period of time, when I first moved to LA, things happened kind of quickly for me, and I did well. But then before Gilmore Girls, I didn't work for a while, and I think that was actually the key for me as an actor to get in class, to learn about the craft, and I really had a decision to make. Am I going to fully invest in this career path? So I feel like that was a defining moment for me, was having it happen quickly and then fall away was a great thing for me to then fully realize what it means to be an actor. And if you want to have a career, a long career, and if you want to impact audiences and that are fully invested in your characters, then, I needed to put in the work and understanding the craft. And I did that shortly after Freaks and Geeks.
And part of understanding the craft in a lot of ways, just in terms maybe it's not the craft, but as a working actor, is this idea of peaks and valleys. Is that like you are going to have moments where you are trying to get the next gig, working to figure it out.
And again, the behind the scenes aspect that fans might not see. I mean, I'm grateful for the life that I have, the job that I have, the challenges that the job presents, and having an opportunity to meet fans and talk with you. I'm grateful for that. But just like any job, I think it's important for people to know is difficult for different reasons. And I have had many ups and downs in my career, personally and professionally. And I think that the way you handle those ups and downs, I'd like to think in a positive way, because all we can control is the way we think about a certain situation. Sometimes we can't control the situation itself, but we can always control our attitudes towards that. And I feel like the vast majority of the time, I'd like to see the positive in the challenges. And one of the things I love is to grow as a person and overcome obstacles. And so I think with any job, you have that. As an actor, especially, you go from not knowing what your next job is going to be, not knowing what the next paycheck is going to be, and handling that in a positive way and getting in touch with who you are and what your truth is organically, I think has been something that, at least for me, has been helpful during those times, the good times and the bad.
How do you go from working on something like Gilmore Girls, right? Working with a writer like Amy ShermanPalladino, whose writing just sings. It intentionally sings, and it's like a beautiful playwright at times, to going into another show. Because Good Wife wasn't until years later. I'm sure there were other great projects, but you are going from a very particular set of skills, not like Liam Neeson, but like a very certain set of skills, that Amy ShermanPalladino has, to writing, to a character who has action, who has things that they have to do, but isn't, loquaciously, singing about what they have to do in a lot of ways.
Yeah, each of those shows, Gilmore Girls, A Good Wife, and The Resident, has its own challenges and differences. Gilmore Girls was obviously incredibly fast-paced, and it was a dramedy in a way, and so that was a specific cadence and a specific skill set to be able to do that, to be able to do the rapid fire, but also try and find the moments and believability within that rapid fire, was a certain skill set with that.
Did you find that you and the other actors, because when you have a verbose script and an actor and the character is talking around a lot about the thing that they actually want to say, do you find that you as the actor have more questions in regards to that, because you have to find a believability and truth for yourself in all of those lines?
I mean, Amy ShermanPalladino and Dan Palladino are great writers, and I've been fortunate to work with great writers on each three of those particular projects: Robert King, Michelle King, and Todd Hawthorne, who's our showrunner, and Amy HoldenJones, who's the creator of The Resident, and all the writing staff on The Resident. So I think that's part of it is when I read Gilmore Girls, A Good Wife, and the Resident, the blueprint has got to be there in terms of that foundation. And I've been fortunate with all those writers, although they have different styles, I feel like those characters and relationships and stories shine through. So that, I think, is hopefully something I've gotten a little bit lucky at, identifying that blueprint of like, okay, I like these characters, I like these relationships, I like these stories, and that's the blueprint that they've all provided. But and then in terms of the legal genre versus the medical genre, it was was a different challenge in that way as well. So I would say they're all great writers in different ways, and that is what is the blueprint of any show, is the quality of the writing.
We have time for a few questions from that. Hey, right here.
Hi, my question is, of all the roles you played, who do you see you most like?
I think right now the easy answer is to say Conrad, just because I spend so much time with him in my head. You know, it's been obviously quite a bit of time since Logan and Carrie, and Conrad is in my head for the last 3 years, 24/7. So he feels like he's a part of me, and I feel like I'm a part of him more than any other character at this particular moment.
Next question.
Hey, there's been quite a few actors who have made guest appearances on the show who have also been on Gilmore Girls. So I wanted to know what it was like to work with them, and if there's anybody who you would like to make an appearance who hasn't done so.
Yeah, Tank Sade was on episode 4, season 2, and he was part of that Life and Death Brigade. So that was really, really special to have gone from the original series to then seeing him with the reboot on Netflix, and then to work with him on The Resident. So that was really, really special. Anybody from Gilmore Girls would be a treat to work with, you know, because that's a specific point in my life, and personally and professionally, and got along with everybody and enjoyed working with everybody. The fact that I got to do that with Tank was incredibly special, so I'd single that particular moment out.
One more.
Hi. I was just curious. I've followed you in 3 shows now. One was filmed in California, one here in New York, and now you're in Canada. Is there a...
Atlanta.
Oh, you're in Atlanta?
For The Resident, yes.
Oh, okay. I knew it was based in Atlanta. I don't know why I thought it was in Canada.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
But I was curious, do you have a favorite place to film? And for your next project, is there a place you would like to film?
Yeah, I think I kind of would say with that question is going from LA, which is home, to New York was very, very challenging. And then, you know, finishing The Good Wife in 2016 and the pilot coming to me in 2017 for The Resident, and knowing if it did get picked up to go to Atlanta was actually one of the most difficult decisions I had to make, because I had just gotten back from New York to LA, was gone for 7 years and didn't expect that, and was questioning, do I want to, you know, do that to myself again, of uproot myself? So that was one of the biggest challenges with that decision-making process, is do I want to move to Atlanta? But I was, you know, passionate about the character and the story, so I made that decision to do it.
You guys are shooting for like 7 months, right?
9.
9 months, right?
9 months.
22 episodes?
Yeah, and that, you know, there was some, before doing the audition, you have to kind of accept that you're willing to make that move for X amount of time. And there were quite a bit of tears for me in the shower by myself of deciding, do I want to uproot myself again?
Is your writing staff down there as well, or are they writing in LA and sending scripts?
They're in LA, and then writers for particular episodes will come to Atlanta. And so to finish that question, if I could, no, thank you. That was, you're just building off of it. To finish the answer of that, you know, I'd like to shoot in LA since my home is there. It's just not because I don't, I love New York, I love Atlanta. It's just that getting kind of uprooted twice for now 10 years. LA is home, my friends are there, my place is there. It would be nice if I could be at home for a minute.
One more.
Hi.
Hello.
My question is, do you think there's any similarities between Conrad and Logan?
I mean, I personally see them quite a bit differently in terms of who they are, you know. So it's hard for me to say in terms of the similarities. I think I can speak maybe more towards their differences. But, you know, Logan was a guy who I felt really tried to bring the best out of Rory, but he was also somebody who was pushing away his what his family wanted him to do in terms of the business. I feel like with Logan was a little bit lost in that way of trying. He was younger character, and so he was a little bit lost in terms of, I don't want to do this this paper. I don't want to be a big mogul, but he wasn't quite sure of what he wanted to do. Whereas Conrad and myself being a bit older and the character being a bit older, I feel like he's very purposeful in terms of, I'm a doctor who protects patients over profits. I became a doctor to help people. So his ambition or his drive is very clear, whereas Logan's very specific to Rory was clear, but in terms of his professional life was not. So those are some of the differences that I can think of, but similarities might be a little bit more challenging for me.
Matt, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you.
The Resident is on Monday nights on Fox. Everybody give Matt a huge round of applause
Thank
for
you.
coming by.
Thank you.